Welcome to Beyond the Scale, the show where everyday heroes tell their stories on how they turn their lives around for the healthier. I'm Coach Brittany, and today's guest is Renee Goldstein. He'll be talking about his lifelong struggle with identity and how he helps people feel comfortable in their own skin through fitness. Hope you enjoy. All right, welcome Renee Goldstein. How are you today?
I'm awesome. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for asking. I'm so excited to have you on the show today for you to share your story with everyone. Tell our listeners a little bit about who you are and what you currently do.
Absolutely. So I'm in Cleveland, Ohio, and a suburb of Cleveland where I run a Fit Body boot camp. Been open about 26 months. And I came across Bedros online. I had been following him when I was a personal trainer doing my own in-home personal training. And he just grabbed me. I think there's an energy and an excitement that I came across when I really wanted to find my next chapter in life. And I really hooked on to a lot of what he had to say. And I started following him, and I joined at Fitness Business Summit. I joined his mastermind coaching program. That led me to my next step of being able to practice in a way that had much more impact on my community, where I could really be an agent of change, as he used to say.
Yeah, I love that. So I want to learn on your journey of how you got to where you are today. So let's take a few steps back. And can you tell us a little bit about what life was like for you growing up at home?
Absolutely. How much time do you have? It's for me, I grew up, I was an only child, and my dad had a ball in my hand before I could walk. I was the athlete. I was that kid. If I could throw, catch, run, jump, get injured, or fall down somewhere, I was doing it. My parents divorced when I was in second grade, and I had a really unique situation with that because my father was always there. My parents never fought in front of me. There was never anything that, as a trauma experience with it, outside of, hey, dad has a new place. So it took some adjusting to on that end, but I didn't have the typical story. My parents are actually 30 some years now, later, our friends, they have Thanksgiving. We do stuff together. So I'm really lucky in that regard. Yeah.
Now I'm interested. So you didn't have, like most people, their parents getting divorced, especially even at a young age. Yeah. You said you weren't exposed to all that trauma, fighting and everything.
No.
So how did that feel for you when, they did divorce? Like, how did you feel inside?
I remember my dad coming in to talk to me about it and like laying in bed with me and explaining what was going on over the summer. And in my head, I was like, okay, cool. So I'm just going to go back and forth like every other day because you're, 7 years old and logic is just what it is.
Right.
So my dad got into, an apartment in town, which is kind of where like the next step of like all the guys that, had been divorced and they stay there for like 4 to 6 months until they can figure out life. And I stayed with him. It was a Friday night. And then that Saturday he had something going on. So I went back to my mom's. And then that Sunday night I was waiting for him to come get me. And mom's like, no, you have school where you stay here tonight. And I literally threw a tantrum at like 11 o'clock. My dad had to come get me because I was sitting at the top of the stairs and I wouldn't go to bed because in my head, it was his night.
Right.
I think, realizing, looking back, obviously, hindsight and things, 2020, but in those situations, having the emotional tools or resources to like express a feeling or express a need or understand what's going on is those tools in your toolbox are much different at 7 when they are now at 36.
Absolutely.
I remember my parents actually, set me up to start talking to like a therapist just to kind of understand. And at 7, apparently everything, but I found someone that I was really comfortable with, and we actually would play games and I'd go there and eat lunch and play games, and she'd talk with me. And they sort of segregated a couple of us from school whose parents were all divorced, and we were the Friday lunch kids with the guidance counselor. That felt weird.
Yeah, I can imagine.
You don't realize that, hey, not everybody's house looks like this, or not everyone has an experience that grows up until you interact with people in the outside world, and you're like, oh, not everything is homogenized or everybody has that same experience. And that's where you learn, culture and diversity. But I remember thinking, this is just temporary, or this is just 30 years later, this is where we are.
Yeah.
But I developed a really close relationship with my dad. Just the way that we would interact and bond over certain things, just differently from my mother, not good or bad, just different. So a lot of the activities and sports and things, he would come over every night. Even if I wasn't with him at 7:00, he would come over and we'd either take a ride or go grab dessert or go play ball. Some of my favorite memories are actually of him coming over in the summer because it stays light out later. And I would always, remember my mom would yell out, "Hey, 5 minutes," or whatever. And there was one specific night that we were playing basketball in the driveway and I heard the door open and heard kind of, stick her head out. And I was waiting for her to be like, all right, wrap it up. She actually flipped the lights on in the driveway and we ended up like shooting for like another hour. And it was like something that was
yeah. It's a memory that sticks with you, right?
Absolutely. So I'm very lucky in the regard of, the family always being around and them making me a priority and teaching me just the foundations of what's important. It's family. It's the time you spend with people outside of monetary and physicality and, tangible things. So that's stuck with me.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's awesome. That your dad was there for you. Your mom too, but at the end of the day, you found the value in, like you said, having those people and that support around you.
It's the experience.
Yeah, exactly. So I heard that you got into music as a kid. How did that all start?
My mom had a piano in the living room that, was just right through our living room, and our family room had like a connecting little fireplace that wasn't used, but it was like a little gate. So I used to actually crawl through there rather than like get up and walk around the couch because if I could crawl or jump on it, I would.
Right.
But I would crawl through there and, just kind of sit at the piano and just kind of bang around on the keys. And little by little, it became something that I just really enjoyed doing and figuring out. And I would start to sit with like the radio or start recording stuff and kind of play by ear back and forth and rewind back and forth. And I'm sure it made my mom nuts. I probably did a lot of things that made her nuts actually, but it was something that I really enjoyed. And I started picking up playing by ear, and it was just a really awesome outlet and to create. I picked up guitar when I was about 6th grade, and I had some dream one night and it was really cool. And I was like playing electric guitar. And then the next day I was like, I kind of want to do that. So I sat down, I told my parents, and I'm like, there's no way this is going to happen because I want an electric guitar. And my dad was like, you know what? We could totally do that. You can keep it at your mom's. I was like, wait, what? But no, they totally went with it. And because the cool thing about an electric guitar, you can put on headphones. So
very true.
Problem solved.
There you go.
I never got the drums because each of them said I could get it at the other one's house.
Right.
So I'll have to, go hang out elsewhere for that. But I totally fell into guitar again, learning to play by ear and, picking up, chord and magazines and tabs for like popular stuff. And I started writing, and it was just a really cool way for me to kind of just create and block out the noise going on everywhere else in life. That it was just mine. I had control. I could completely just sit and put on headphones all night if I wanted to, and I would.
Yeah, it's a great outlet. Music in itself, whether it's listening to it, playing it, learning it like you did, it's a great outlet in my opinion also. So now you said that your dad had a ball in your hand from a very young age.
Yeah.
So would fitness continue to stay a part of your life growing up, or was there any point where that stopped?
Yeah. So I grew up playing soccer, basketball, tennis, anything that I could do and run and get sweaty and dirty and come home with grass and stains, and my mom would be angry about it. I played varsity basketball all through high school and started varsity and had some offers from smaller schools, but I decided in college that I wanted to kind of focus on academics and have just a more balanced schedule from life changing at that point, just leaving and rather than throwing in sports in 47 schedules. Mm-hmm. Most kids, or you hear the stories of, freshman 15. I had the freshman 35, and it wasn't even first year. It was first semester.
Oh, okay.
So my eating habits stayed the same, if not worsened, but my physicality and activity level changed. So I'd always been training or in season or conditioning for something, and that changed for me in college because it wasn't built into my routine like it used to be. So coming out of it on the other side of, all right, clothes are fitting differently or not fitting at all. My energy is tanked. I'm eating like crap. I'm staying up late. I'm justifying, that's what you do. You justify everything in college.
Right.
You make excuses and why you should or shouldn't show up for that 8 a.m. class because no. But yeah, athletics was a big part of it. And it took a little bit of a hiatus when I adjusted to college and realized that, hey, so if my activity changes and my food either doesn't change or it gets worse, the rest of my body's going to change. So it actually affected my mom a lot more than I realized. My fiance was talking to her about something last year when we were at the house, and my mom made reference to it, and it actually got like teary-eyed because when I came home, she didn't recognize me. It took me a second to catch up to life. And hey, I know that if I do A, then B happens. Well, if I do this, then something better will happen. So I stopped eating all the crap. I stopped stopping McDonald's and getting McFlurries and ordering pizza late at night and eating as of opportunity because it's there. And I got back into the gym and started training again and came home at the end of, that freshman year back in May in a much better position. And, it took me through summer to actually like get back to where I was. But that whole transformation process from being on the side of an athlete to stopping to getting to more of, an overweight position and getting back on board is something that, is not foreign to me. And taking that into what I do with people now from, personal training to now, coaching and running a fit body boot camp is, a really good connection.
Yeah, it really helps you relate with your clients and understand where they're coming from because you've been there, you've been through it, you've gotten out of it. And so, I think you're a great mentor and coach for that.
People look at somebody and they don't know what has happened in the past or where they're coming from or what experiences they've had. So they're like, oh, you don't get it. And I was like, how much time do you have? We'll have a conversation because I guarantee you on some spectrum or another, I understand what it's like to come back from something or to be uncomfortable in your skin or have to work through adversity. And I've really tried to be as forthright as I can with people with an open ear to connect.
So doing all that you did, have you always been an outgoing person?
I wore different hats, I think, growing up and at different stages because people knew me as the athlete. People knew me as, the game winner or the, control the floor in basketball or lead scorer or whatever. I was comfortable in that because it gave me a purpose. And, as an only child, I was actually a lot more comfortable around adults because I was always with my parents versus siblings. So connecting socially was kind of weird at times. When you put me in a situation that I'm confident in, I'm fine. Talking about fitness or talking about music or running this or that, that I have those skills I feel good with. But it took a little while socially to connect to people because whether it's, shared interests or lack of common values or experience. And that was a struggle for me. I don't want to say I wasn't outgoing, but I think I was reserved or guarded or kind of wore the mask or face that was expected or known from me, if that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah. So growing up, was there ever points where you didn't feel comfortable in your own skin?
I think that was a lot of the issues where I started to, get more reserved about because I think society sets expectations or cultural norms. And if you step outside that box or, you're supposed to check off this box and you're like, I don't like anything going on over there. That's where I started getting a lot of feedback and, whether it was, parents or teachers, showing concern that, hey, your kid's going outside and, running around in the mud and playing with the boys at recess. But, all the other, the girls are, sitting here doing things and there's like no cross connection. And they actually called my parents and like had a meeting about it. I found out about this much later in life, but in fourth grade. Yeah. In fourth grade, they called my parents and, they talked to the guidance counselor and, were encouraging me to like make friends with some of the other girls in class or why don't you try to do this or do that? And I was like, I don't understand. I'm happy. So that kind of led into, later in life of, Renee's just a tomboy or, does this and that's cool, but it'll click later. And that it'll click later thing never really occurred as planned.
So how did you begin to start the process of, learning to feel comfortable in your own skin and just what did that look like for you?
I think the first step for me was, I grew up in a community that was, upper middle class, and in a small, like 2 square mile radius. So it was kind of like the bubble. So everyone knows everyone's business and everyone's in everyone's life, and, nothing happens without like the bat phone ringing and 5 minutes later, and it's like everywhere. So getting away from home for me was my first step as far as figuring out who I was away from what everybody else knew and what everyone else expected, or the kid that, did this and it lives with you, or, I'm sure everyone comes to college and like no one knows me from the kid that threw up on the bus or picked my nose and,
Right.
So college was a way for me to kind of really stand on my own 2 feet, and it's like kindergarten for grownups. You get to start over again.
Yeah, reclaim your identity and, be that authentic you.
Yeah. And I think for a long time I was troubled with that, and I think I sat on that, and that caused a lot of depression in high school years. That it wasn't a situation style thing, hey, this happened and I'm upset, versus there's just this edge and this underlying like crawling out of my skin for no reason. And I started with a therapist, and when I was 16, it took a year of me ignoring him or slamming the doors or leaving to actually start talking to him. But in college, I think I was able to take some steps outside my comfort zone, or the limitations that had been externally placed, and, come to terms with some things, whether it was in the forefront of my mind or I didn't have words for it at a young age. And that was the first step for me of taking, claiming an identity or reclaiming what I felt and who I thought I was. And that kept being reinvented over the years.
I mean, I think everyone is constantly reinventing themselves. Like you get to where, you think you're supposed to be, and then you reinvent yourself again. And it's just an ongoing process that I think everybody goes through. And I think a lot of our listeners can definitely relate to you on that aspect. Was there any relation between the way you viewed yourself and your health?
In the moment, no. Looking back, absolutely. I think the lack of confidence or self-esteem or value or worth that I placed on myself when I was in a darker spot bled through to everything. My health took a dive. Like, I was struggling in college to find words, not because it was a bad situation or I wasn't happy, but dealing with, a lot of things that kept me up at night and figuring out, my identity. And I was eating late. I was, doing stuff that wasn't helping, and my health took a dive. When I came to terms with certain things or decided that enough was enough, it translated back into me taking care of myself. And, as one of my coaches and mentors says, how we do anything is how we do everything.
Absolutely. So what exactly was the turning point for you?
There were a couple. When I was in my summer going to junior year of college, I was finally able to give voice to something that when it spins in your head, it's so anxiety ridden. And then when you are able to put it out louder in the world, it's an amazing exhale. I was able to, call one of my best friends, Andrew, and I said, I need you to come to my apartment. And this was, summer school in college. And I said, Andrew, I'm gay. And it was the most like exhale moment. It also like, holy crap, I can't take that back. It's out there.
That's the first
but it
time
makes you deal with it. Yeah. That was the first time I'd vocalized it out loud. And, he was also, was gay, and it was just a safe space.
Right.
I hadn't told my parents yet. I hadn't talked to my roommates yet. And it was just the first conversation of, okay, I said it. It's fine. And I'm like, wait, I have to keep saying it. Or the people that I care about and how I have that conversation. I went home, and it was the end of summer school, and I had gone home, and I went to dinner with my mom and my stepdad at that time. And we were out to dinner, and I was literally like shaking and rocking because it was always in my head at any given point. This is going on, and it spins and it spins, and it makes you crazy. So I went home, and I went upstairs, and my stepdad followed me up, and he's like, what's going on? And I was like, I don't know how to tell mom I'm gay. And he goes, well, you have to tell her now because I'm going to leave your room and she's going to wonder what you told me that you couldn't tell her. And now you're going to put me in a spot. And I'm like, oh, crap. And knowing my mother, I was like, yeah, you're right. And I, had that conversation with him for a little bit and calmed myself down. And we opened the door to my bedroom and my mom was standing at the top of the stairs, like in the talking spot, like waiting to be like, oh my God, what's wrong with my kid?
Right.
So that was hey, so funny story. I sat down, I told my mom, I said, there's something that's been on my mind and I wanted to be able to tell you. And I know you're probably going to have questions and I don't know if I'm going to have the answers to them right now, but as I do, I want to keep this communication open. And, I told her and she started crying. I think any parent, wants two things in life. They want their kid to be safe and they want their kid to be happy. And if they see a situation that's arising that could challenge that or make it more difficult, they're going to worry, which I get. Mama bear is going to want to make sure everything is fine and safe, but you can't control what's going to happen externally. But I had another breath of fresh air.
Yeah. I mean, did you ever have those feelings that maybe, your parents would potentially disown you? Or, I mean, I know a lot of those thoughts do happen in the community. So
yeah.
Did you feel that? Yeah.
You know what? I didn't, I logically knew it wouldn't happen, but emotionally you're fearful. You go to worst case scenario in any situation. Right. It's like, oh my God, I have a paper cut, my arm's falling off. Like you jump to oh, it's just this thing. But worst case scenario is that the sky is falling. So I had seen, people that I went to school with and, whether high school or at college at that point of that parents had an adverse reaction to it, and whether it's disowning or, hey, my kid's going to shock therapy. Because, I've seen and heard horror stories and I've done a lot of speaking on speakers panels throughout. And I've heard some really sad and disturbing things. I didn't think it would get that bad, but that fear is always in the back of my head. Absolutely. For sure.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you did not have to go through any of that. I'm glad that your parents were supportive and, you're able to work through all that. But so after coming out, how did your life change?
There's a freedom of the second you stop caring what other people think, you're free. I think we live in so many boxes or limitations that society places and expectations that aren't always going to happen. And that's okay. You figure out where you fit in and no one, is like, well, you have to check this box to walk in this door. And I'm like, screw that. Like, you know what? I'm done checking boxes. I'm done being labeled. I'm done hiding behind something because it's exhausting.
It truly is.
You're on all the time. It's a mask or it's a cloak that you put on and you're like, A, this is uncomfortable. B, this is exhausting. And C, none of this is real. So, it opened doors. It allowed me to live out loud when I was muted, if that makes sense.
No, yeah, it definitely makes sense. So do you still face challenges today? And if you do, how do you deal with those?
Absolutely. Since then, I've gone through a lot of different experiences of dealing with not just, sexual identity and sexual orientation, but as things progressed, I kind of became more and more aware of there's something deeper going on. And, similar to the experience, like, let's say, you go back to being a teenager and you woke up and there's a pimple and that's all you saw in the mirror. For me, the focal point was my chest. And you go back to a teenager, all you see in the mirror is that pimple. And to everyone else, it's just Tuesday and everything's fine. For me, it became more and more uncomfortable in my skin and the physicality of it. So I went through a lot of soul searching and research and talking to some friends and really took the next step of saying, you know what, this is more than a sexual identity versus a gender orientation. And I ended up having a bilateral double mastectomy in September of 2012. And I should have done it so much sooner, because going through all of that and finally seeing my external align with how I was feeling inside was a game changer. I had pushed back on surgery because I wanted to finish school. I wanted to finish my graduate degree. I wanted to get my business started. And there's always, a reason to push it off. And I think it was fear. For me, it was fear.
So how do you use your experiences to help your clients overcome the fears that they have?
I really try to, understand where they're coming from and, how it impacts their life. How does this experience of being uncomfortable in your skin or overweight or dealing with a chronic illness, how is it inhibiting your day? How does your daily activities change? Because sometimes it's not about, wanting to get into a size 2 or bench press a house. It's, can I go through my life and be stronger and stand up taller and feel more confident and take that to everything I do? So I've sat down and I've talked to them about whether it's my experience from, gaining 35 pounds freshman first semester and understanding that it's hard to take a step outside yourself and it's hard to put in the work. And I understand what it's like to be uncomfortable because of whether it's gaining weight or whether it's being the, odd man out, or whether it's dealing with, hey, I don't like who I see in the mirror. And I've had that experience because every single time I would get dressed or every single time that I would have to fit in or do something, it felt uncomfortable. It was emotional strain. It was draining and I was exhausted.
So how important is it to really love yourself and to be comfortable in your own skin, no matter, what anyone else thinks you should be or what you should look like?
I think that is probably the foundational most important thing, because you take you to every situation. It's not like, I'm only in this skin for like a couple hours a day. Like I go everywhere. It's the only one I have. And if it's not living authentically, if it's not being comfortable or doing the things that you want to do, you're living at like a muted life. Whether we do things or make choices out of fear or we do it out of hope, it dictates the whole rest of your day. You're looking through foggy lenses or you're looking through a clear window. And I want to be able to look through the clearest window possible. It's game changing. After I had my surgery, I remember when I lived in a surgical post-op vest for about 8 days and drains and the whole deal. And the second that they did the first reveal and I looked down and I looked in the mirror and I was like, this is how it should have been the whole time. And the rest of my life made sense. And like that millisecond, it was a game changer. And I was finally like, okay, game on, let's go. Because I would sit hunched over. I went through years of not being comfortable with my chest, and then even wearing, a binder and, chest compression. And all of a sudden I could sit up straight. I could walk taller, and then I would enter a room and I could own it. Whether it was reality or not, I felt that in my head I could do anything because this was who I was and this was real.
That is so powerful. I mean, I'm so happy that you had the courage and confidence to even make that decision, despite, everyone else in the world trying to put you in a box, trying to check you off. I am so happy that you were able to find that courage and become, your true authentic self. And I think that says a lot for our listeners out there also. Do you have any advice that you would give our listeners to, make that next step to be in the body that they want to be?
Absolutely. Whether it's dealing with their health, whether it's dealing with the just physical change in composition, or, dealing with the adversity that comes along with it. I've been in several situations that have been threatening because of the way that I appear and people mistaking things or making comments or pushing their children behind them because of being fearful. I think a lot of people's experience of, the GLBT spectrum, whether it's identity and orientation or gender, has been introduced via TV and media. It's Jerry Springer. It's something to be afraid of. It's something to fear. It's something to pity or something to laugh at. So when you're dealing with that, you make decisions based on, safety or concerns like that, but you also make decisions out of just fear or not feeling good enough or worthy. So when you can begin to value yourself and you can begin to step outside of that, the best advice I can give somebody outside of, taking that first step is it's kind of like that, taking that leap of, I might not have my parachute on, but I'm going to freaking build it on the way down and figure out how. Nothing changes if nothing changes. And that's really powerful because I could sit in that rut. I could sit in that feedback loop and that hamster wheel and just be miserable and rock, or I can take a step outside of it. And because I know what this hard feels like, this hard is miserable. It's comfortably miserable. I know what to expect. The hard on the other end is putting in the work, and whether that's going to the gym to, be able to lose weight, to feel stronger, to get more healthy, to build muscle and burn fat, or whether that hard is taking a step with therapy and taking a step to acknowledge who you really are. That hard leads to a positive outcome. So pick your hard. You can be miserable with where you are, and that's hard, or you can pick the hard that's going to lead to a better outcome to take steps to dig yourself out of that hole.
And to all of our listeners out there too, I think that's very powerful, but all of our listeners out there, taking a step, it doesn't have to be a big step. It could be a small step. As long as you're taking a step in the right direction, that's all that matters. And to continue taking those steps in the right direction. Absolutely.
I could have stopped my process with this the second that I got a double take from, a server or a person in the bathroom. I often, I've walked a very androgynous line, and at a certain point I would stand in front of the, men's and women's room, and I'd think, all right, on this side, I could walk into the women's room where, biologically I was born female, but I embody nothing of that says ma'am or lady. And, but I'm supposed to go in this room. So I could either walk in this door and get yelled at and, be fearful from other people and make them uncomfortable, or I can walk into the men's room, and this has occurred, and, forgive my language, but, derogatory terms that they think I'm, this little twink, little gay boy, or some, other awesome words, and get the shit kicked out of me. Forgive me. I'm sorry.
No, you're totally fine. You're totally fine. But that's a true issue. That's an issue that, a lot of people have to deal with in life. So, thank you for being open and honest about all of that.
I've related it to other people because, when someone walks in the gym, they feel like the odd man out. Not everyone walks in perfect shape, and people have a fear. I've worked with people of, 250, 300, 350 pounds that walk in and know what it feels like to have the whole room look. It's like the record player stopped and everyone's like, because they're different. They're larger. They don't fit in, and they're uncomfortable. I know what that's like for a different reason, but I get it because you feel like all eyes are on you, and any whisper or any turn, everyone's staring at you, and half of it could be in your head, but it is always that scenario because you are that uncomfortable. You think everybody else sees it, and everybody else is in your head with that negative feedback.
Absolutely. Now, how important through your whole entire journey, how important do you think it was that you had, a support system there for you?
I probably wouldn't have taken the steps I did if I didn't have that support system, and the cheerleaders and the peer level support was so important to me. Past, my surgery and recovery and, friends and family, a couple of years later, I took the step of saying, you know what, I'm still not where I want to be. And I finally was able to use the words like, hey, I'm transgender and I want to make that transition. And I started testosterone 2 years ago. And if my family or my fiance or girlfriend at the time, I don't think I'd be able to take that step because that support is it's life or death. And when you convert that into people's daily activities of whether it's being comfortable in their skin or losing weight or having a support system of someone at home that's cheering you on, isn't it, pushing you to be your better self, or you have people that are just pushing you down and telling you no and that you're not good enough, or it makes or breaks your entire day. And to live in that cycle. And when I meet with clients, I ask them, who's on your team? Who supports you? When you leave here, like you have a fitness family here, you have people that are going to high five, people that are going to celebrate your triumphs and support you through challenges. Who does that outside of here? That is where you see the disconnect, and they don't think that they're good enough, or they've always been told that they've been put down or that they're lazy or fat or never going to accomplish anything. And they begin to believe it.
Yeah, I agree. Having that support system is definitely powerful, really life-changing at the end of the day. Who you surround yourself with pretty much dictates, who you're going to be. And so surrounding yourself with positive, supporting people is so important. Yeah. And you want to make sure, even if it's not friends and family, you want to go out and find those places that will support you and, help you become the best version of yourself.
Absolutely. I don't take it lightly when someone walks in our door and says, I need help, because you know what? You don't know if they've had a bad experience elsewhere, if there's anxiety about starting something, if they have failed at everything else, or they've been told that they're never going to get better. So for them to take that first step is huge. And I tell them, you know what? This is step one, is coming through the door. I guarantee you, if you can get you in the door to sit down and talk and connect to what's going on, you're going to take that next step. And the next step becomes easier. It's progress. It doesn't have to be the leap from, 0 to 60. But if I can get you in the car, and I can get your car on the street, and I can get you go driving down, you're going to get somewhere.
Baby steps after baby step, and then they turn into bigger steps, and then it's just the momentum keeps going.
Absolutely. And you know what? You're on the road. If you have to course correct and readjust your map, cool. You're so much further than just sitting about getting it in your car to go somewhere, but maybe not today.
Yeah, absolutely. So I kind of want to wrap it up now. And
sure.
I really want to know from you, what does living beyond the scale mean to you?
To me, I think it speaks volumes about not, quantifying your life, but the quality and your experiences. You're not defined by a number. You're not defined by someone else's opinion. Your opinion of me is none of my business. It doesn't change my direction. It's not going to make or break my day, because I know exactly where I'm going. And the second I let you derail me, it puts a hiccup in what I'm doing. So beyond that scale is saying that I'm valued, I'm worth it. It is not selfish to take care of me, and that I'm going to succeed. And if I'm not there yet, I will be.
That was beautifully said. I mean, if you don't take care of yourself, there's no way that you can take care of anyone else at the end of the day. So I want to thank you so much for sharing your story, Renee. It's been a pleasure having you on the show. For any of our listeners that want to visit your location, where can they go to find you?
You can find us at Lyndhurst, LYNDHURST, fitbody.com. You can also find us on Facebook at Lyndhurst Fit Body Bootcamp. Come check us out. We got all sorts of fun videos, and just really creating that family and that community of support. It's positivity, and it just bleeds. So that's who we are.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you again. It's a pleasure having you, and hopefully we can have you on again in the future.
I look forward to it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Renee. Did you know that you could have done a full workout in the amount of time it took you to listen to this podcast? Go to fitbodybootcamp.com to claim your 3 free sessions now. And remember to join me next Tuesday so you can see who our special guest is. Until then, remember to live a fit body, fit mind forever.